Welcome everyone, Costin here with my campaign guide as Kislev in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. People have spoken, and the thing that they want to see the most in Warhammer 3 from my channel is race guides at the moment. Though I will be doing other things as well, like Dark Tide, as well as trying to start a new series focused on improving people's campaigns. But for that, I do need campaigns from people, so you can send the campaign you want me to look at and to go over ways to improve it in the email in the description of this video, if you're interested in that. But to talk about improving campaigns, one of the things to realize playing as Kislev is that you are playing an incredibly weak race. Now, don't get me wrong, Kislev can certainly feel very fulfilling to succeed with the campaign, because they do feel, well, they do feel pretty interesting in a lot of ways. I think a lot of the Warhammer 3 races were well designed, I guess, on a concept level. Just the execution of it was lacking with pretty much all of them except Cafe, and even Cafe has some issues. But they certainly had a lot of things going for them. It's just like the execution of their economies, the fact that they were designed for a more limited campaign in the Realms of Chaos, all of those create problems for them. For Kislev, the main issue is economy and also geographic area. One of the things I would say is if you're playing a Kislev campaign, you're not going to be playing that campaign in Kislev past the first few early turns. The reason behind that is that the Kislev territory sucks. There's no way to put this in a better way. It's just not good. The reason it's not good is you have the three major cities, Kislev, Prague, Erengrad. Prague is independent. Kislev starts under Kislev starts under Catherine. Erengrad starts under Costin. But these cities, although they're decent, they're not amazing. Like Kislev, for instance, here is at tier 4, and it's only generating 2,000 income. Now, 2,000 income might seem like a lot, except for one thing. These cities will consume a great deal of your money. The reason they will do so is because the benefits they bring are not the economic benefits, but rather the fact that they have a bunch of special structures. For instance, the Grand Citadel of Kislev increases the income from all buildings in Kislev by 16%. The Boka Palace gives me Ice Guard recruitment and an Ice Guard upkeep benefit. In Prague, which I also control as Catherine, I have the Citadel of Prague, which gives me a global recruitment duration and global recruitment capacity benefit, and the Magnus Gardens, which give me a Hero and Lord Recruit rank benefit. And there's other structures as well. In Prague, you can get the Bleakness, which gives you the recruitment of the Griffin Legion and leadership benefits against Warriors, Chaos Demons, and Norska. And in Kislev, you have a bunch of options like the Temple of Ursun, which would give you quite a decent amount of furs, but more importantly, a growth benefit faction-wide. Though this is more of a late-game benefit, I will not get this until really tier 5, and that's why exactly I haven't gotten it over here. And then you've got the Imperial Embassy. Erengrad has its own benefits as well. If we look at it, we do have the Frostdome, which gives recruitment of Little Groms and of heavy war sleds, as well as Frost Maiden capacity. Then we have Temple of Manon, as well as basically a bunch of benefits from these cities. Now, these cities can generate a decent amount of income through basically the Merchant Guild Hall chain, but it's not going to be enough, sadly enough. Although the 5% income from markets, faction-wide, is certainly going to be significant. Outside of the big cities, though, most of Kislev territory is pretty crap. The Western Oblast, Troll Country, Eastern Oblast, and Southern Oblast are not really worth that much. Well, the South can be worth it because it's the safest of all of them, and it can generate a decent amount of income. However, even then, it's still going to be limited by the fact that it's only minor settlements, not major settlements in any of them. There's no proper provincial capital. And Kislev can actually benefit from that in a great way. So Kislev territory is not worth it, though Volgograd and for Jakova do have resources, which can be useful. But outside of that, there's no resources. It's not worth the money investment. There is a bit of a benefit with regards to Ataman capacity, which increases the more provinces you hold. But outside that, it's generally not worth bothering. What about the other provinces near Kislev? To the north, right? Because you're supposed to fight chaos. Well, the problem is they're very exposed, and they also have a lot of terrain types that don't suit you. So, for instance, in the north, in like the Trollheim Mountains, where Azazel is, right, you have 2 of these regions are chaotic wastelands, which have significant downsides. As for the ones that are frozen, most of those are also extremely exposed. Like this entire coastline to defend here in either the Gorodni Mountains or the Giant Home Mountains, it's incredibly difficult to defend. It's incredibly difficult to attack from here because, yeah, sure, you can load an army in a port, no problem, and make it set sail. That's not the issue. But actually landing in the north where your enemies are going to be, that's a different ballgame altogether, let alone the Skull Road and all that. Bunch of exposed territory. It's not worth it, at least early on in your campaign. Right now, I'm doing it because I'm looking to wipe out Archeon, but I've barely been doing this for like, 10 turns or so in this particular campaign. And only now am I pushing against Archeon. Essentially what I'm trying to say here is, don't fight for Kislev, don't fight for the Chaos Waste, don't fight for Noshka. You're going to waste a lot of time, resources, money, and you're going to lose territory again and again, because you're never going to have enough armies to properly hold this territory because, well, they're constantly getting raided, you can't build them up, etc. So that is a major problem for Kislev. Instead, if you are playing Kislev, here's what you want to do. Regardless of the legendary Lord of Kislev that you are playing, be it Kostaltin, Catherine, or Boris Ursus, what you want to do is do as little as possible to secure Kislev. You don't want to secure the 3 major cities, though they are going to be a major gold sink. Those structures that I mentioned, like these special structures, they cost a lot. And it's not just gold either, it's also devotion. I'll get into that in just a moment. But it is going to cost a great deal to get these structures, and you are going to have to deal with that situation. So you're going to need sources of income. You will gain a lot of money from fighting armies and sacking settlements and all that, but you're also going to need income every turn. Now, I've secured about 30,000 income in this campaign so far. That's actually a pretty decent amount, but I haven't done it by fighting Kislev itself. Instead, I've done enough to take out Fraught and Hellpit, Azazel, and the Tower of Crack to take out Trog, though actually Kostaltin finished off Trog, though I took out two stacks of Trog's armies, and then Kostaltin finished the job. I'm ensured Crack and Drog stay alive, because dwarves can be useful as allies, or they can be useful. I ensure they survive by giving them Hellpit. It's not good terrain for me, so I gave Hellpit to them after I took it. And now it's heavily fortified. It would actually be a very difficult fight for any AI to come take Hellpit, especially if there's a full stack of dwarves defending it. Though the dwarves do certainly have their issues, but they also have a stack and a half over here, and they're getting Iron Drakes. Those are pretty good units. But yeah, you do it the minimal required to hold the territory in the north, and then you move to the south. The reason this will benefit you in a great deal is if you can deal with the trio of Draika, Vlad, and Azak, and Azak and Draika are on a collision course, as long as you don't make any deals with like the Ostermark in particular, which Draika and Azak seem to want to go to war with. Like, as long as you just basically ignore the Ostermark's existence, maybe even declare war on them to take their capital, Draika and Azak seem to want to leave you alone, and that is in your interest to do. You don't want to end up in a war with them. You want them to fight each other, weaken each other, and especially with Draika, her main army can be an absolute nightmare. But if you ignore it, if she goes for Azak, and she might wipe him out or significantly weaken him, and then you can turn around after you've dealt with Azazel, Fraught, and Trog, you can just swoop down from the north, take the Griffinwood, deprive Draga of her dreaded Treekin recruitment, because she can only recruit them from the Griffinwood, and she will become much weaker, and you'll be able to deal with her. That's the simplest way of putting it. She is an absolute misery to face in battle, and I would strongly recommend you avoid fighting her in a manual battle. Try and bait her into a situation where you cannot resolve that, regardless of the legendary lord you're playing as, Kislev. Boris Ursus will actually have the best chance on that, but I'll talk about legendary lords in just a second. But you want to take this territory. The Ostermark in particular is a great province. It has 4 regions. And this actually is hugely beneficial to Kislev for 2 reasons, and we touch on the economy. Kislev's economy by default is pretty weak. You've got the farms, which can be upgraded to give you 100 income and level 3. That is a lot of money to spend to just get 100 income. Or the market chain, which can be upgraded in a provincial capital only to 300. And you're going to be spending thousands of gold to do it. Like, to get in Beckhaven, to get it to tier 4, it's 2,000 income. And this is with some benefits to reduce the cost of structures. Just remember that. And at tier 5, it's 3,000. However, there are significant benefits to doing so. Like, your economy is always going to be weak. You're going to rely a lot on getting money from sacking settlements or raiding cafe and caravans. Because Kislev, especially if you're expanding south, you're going to be standing on major routes, major arteries of trade that Cafe uses. And you can either benefit from this passively, because Cafe and caravans might end up going to your territory, like Erengrad in particular, as an example, or the Frozen Landing if you take it later on in the campaign. There's going to be a lot of Cafe and caravans heading there. But, or you can just take them directly, but that's not the only thing. Kislev, for all its inherent weakness economic-wise, and they don't really have major research benefits they can use to improve their economy. For all their inherent weakness with their economy, they do have one thing that makes this work somewhat. Though keep in mind, it's still going to be weaker than many other factions' economy, and that means you're going to maintain fewer armies than anyone else and lesser quality. So right now, I might be generating 30,000 income at turn 60. With some other factions, I'd be generating double that, if not triple that. And with far less effort than this. Let me be clear on this. Far less effort, far less money being spent to develop these economies. Just remember that aspect. But one thing that can make Kislev economy works are resource buildings. You can trade, and obviously resources will count towards your trade income, and you do get some trade tariff benefits. But every trade resource building gives a overall benefit to your entire economy faction-wide. So for instance, kilns will give you 3% to all markets. Basically, this entire chain will generate 3% more. So for instance, at level 1, I've gotten so many benefits that I'm going for at level 1 from 100 to 128, which is still pathetic compared to, say, Cafe or like the Elves or anything like that, but it's starting to make them more competitive and stacks up over and over and over again. The cattle ranch increases incomes from farms by 6%. So the farms right now are actually getting plus 75% benefit. So a level 3 farm or a farm estate is generating 174 income. And this is for every farm faction-wide. Marble, because I do have some marble here in Karak Vlag, which is a very exposed territory, but marble produces, gives you, obviously, marble production, some income, but also construction cost, minus 4% for provincial capital and settlement buildings, faction-wide. And all of these things do stack faction-wide. So going south into the Ostermark, and even further south into Sylvania, is actually your best plan campaign-wise because of all the resource buildings. There's not many resource buildings in Kislev, but there's quite a few down south. You get Lumberyard, for instance, in Tempelhof. That's 6% from farms, timber production, recruitment cost for war sleds, or, gold in Drakenhof. Like, Vlad really has an easy campaign because he's got the gold mine. He's got 2 easy provinces to get, like, in a couple of turns. And hell, he can even get Zufbar without too much issue. Things like iron mines give you upkeep benefits. So there's a lot of economic benefits Kislev can get. Though, again, you're not going to have as strong of an economy as some other factions would with far less effort. You're never going to have as much trade benefits. But there's another thing as well. The Kislev cities, right, they do have this chain that gives them benefit from trade tariffs. But trade tariffs are not necessarily too significant, and you're not getting so much benefit from trade tariffs to really make it significant. The High Elves have much more from benefit from trade tariffs with far less effort, far less cost. You do, however, get from major settlements that are not Kislev cities, you do get the roads and the caravans. Now, compared to a tier 3, which you can get in any settlement, the roads and caravans also give you something that's very substantial. And this is production of tradable resources 30% in local province, or going all the way to 50%. Now, Sylvania, Ostermark, Northern Sylvania, hell, even over here, like, there's a bunch of resources that you can gain in the Empire. So if you start getting settlements to tier 4, you're going to get a lot of income benefits that will start stacking. And on top of that, there's also a way, though not a great one, let me be clear on this, but there is a way for Kislev to actually produce quite a bit of resource, some resources at the very least, and that's through the animal den. You can construct this in any settlement at tier 3, and it goes all the way to tier 5. This is where you recruit your snow leopards, war bears, and then elemental bears. And at tier 3, you get 8 bundles of furs. Every fur, if we look in the treasury and we look at trades, every fur will sell for 11. Getting a lot of trade partners, potentially getting a lot of furs, might actually be the best way to improve your economy. Though I wouldn't necessarily trade the furs for other buildings. I wouldn't necessarily trade other buildings for furs until you get to tier 4. That's when you might want to make that decision, though it depends on the region. Like, for instance, here in Southern Sylvania, I would not do it. I could do it in some of these regions, like maybe I should just stop producing this and, for instance, and sell it off and start getting fur production here, these two, to improve the economy. Basically, if you can get a big province and you can get the roads and you can get furs and other resources in those provinces, you can generate a decent amount of money, but still, there's going to be, of course, a lot of downsides when it comes to that. Compared to other factions, partly because your economic buildings do cost a lot of money, or more money than they do for other factions, and also partly because those economic buildings don't generate a lot of money by default. Like, I would take a hit to, the benefits that you get from resource buildings if the tier 1 market score would generate double the income. I wouldn't mind the hit over here, for instance, on the income from markets. If I could get 200 from that to let's say 300 to 400, all that would be far more useful from my perspective. Another thing to know about Kislev's economy is related to their unique resource, which is devotion. And yes, I'm throwing it in the economy, even though obviously you're not going to gain it. You're not going to gain most of your devotion from buildings. You're going to gain some from buildings. Just be aware that most of it is going to come from fighting chaos. The way devotion works is you gain devotion by fighting chaos by default. Warriors of Chaos, Demons, Norscan, not Skaven, crucially. The downside of going south, of course, is you're not going to get that from fighting vampires or the Empire, but it actually is worth it. Here's the thing, though, about devotion. All of these special buildings in the unique Kislev cities, on top of gaining supporters, on top of building churches, all of these things cost devotion, and quite a lot of it. On top of that, the invocations that give you supporters for various actions will have a default devotion cost, but this will increase the more regions you hold. Now, how do you solve that? Well, you can gain a lot for fighting chaos, especially a demonic army can give like 60, 70. But yeah, you're going to have a lot of issues or limitations of devotion, especially if you're trying to win the supporter race. You want to win the supporter race, by the way. Every Kislev lord that deals with supporters wants to get supporters as high up as possible. If only to get your short campaign victory conditions done as quickly as possible, because that free hero capacity for all heroes can mean quite a lot. And then, of course, long campaign victory condition. Like, I'm getting pretty close to 70 settlements, and I'm gonna wipe out the Warhost of the Apocalypse in short order. So I could even reasonably get the long campaign victory condition, which would give me hero recruit rank for all provinces. But first, I need to win the supporter race, which, yeah, it's pretty significant. I don't remember what Boris or Ursun's short campaign victory condition is, but for Katrin and Castalton, you do basically need to win the supporter race. That is a bit ridiculous. I think the long campaign victory condition should be winning the supporter race. I think, let's say, 400, maybe even less, maybe even 200, no, 400, let's say, or 300 really, would be a far better metric to use, because, yeah, if you win the supporter race, you're long past winning or securing your early campaign position by that point, and you're probably going to be approaching and even surpassing the long campaign victory condition by that point. Like, it might not be surprising to actually achieve the long campaign victory conditions except supporters, and then get the supporters much later, but getting those supporters does matter. Now, to gain supporters, you need to basically invoke a god, the main way. Like, there's other ways, there's churches, but these do cost devotion as well, but there's various buildings that give you supporters per turn. But the main way is you invoke God. Ursun is the best, especially with settlements so tightly concentrated on the Immortal Empires map. You invoke Ursun, you start taking a lot of territory. You need to be very aggressive when playing Kislev, because Ursun, any invocation only lasts 10 turns. And yes, you're only really using the invocations for supporters. Later on, when you, like very, very late on in the campaign, you might use Dash, for instance, for the trade tariffs and crucially the income from all buildings, and you might even improve on that, because there is research to improve these invocations. But for much of your early and mid-game campaign, you're purely going to use them not for the campaign benefits. You should really use Ursun. The attrition can be a bit beneficial. The combat ability can help you out a bit, but really you're mainly using it to get those 5 supporters when occupying a settlement. And that's how you win the supporter race. Even as Boris Ursus, you still care about supporters because, one, if one side wins, like if either Catherine or Consultant wins, like they'll obviously confederate the other one, and if, say, you have good relations with Catherine, you can confederate her. But more importantly, you also gain control benefits. Like if you're playing Catherine and Consultant, you get just a passive benefit to control, leadership, and speed. If you're playing Boris, it depends who you're supporting. If you support Castalton, he gives you a temporary control benefit. If you support Catherine, she's gonna give you a growth benefit. And it can actually be very useful because it allows you to get your settlements to a much higher level than you might otherwise. Particularly important if you do decide to fight in the Chaos Waste, because obviously there's quite a few downsides when it comes to that. To building up growth buildings in the Chaos Waste in particular. So it can be beneficial having a lot of growth as Boris Ursus. By the way, you care about supporters, and you care about getting that supporter cap as high as possible. If you're playing Catherine Consultant, you want to confederate the other one. If you're playing Boris Ursus, you may want to keep both Catherine Consultant alive and have one confederate the other, or I think Boris, if I'm not mistaken, can actually declare war on other Kislev factions, including Catherine Consultant. Feels silly, but he can do so, and it might just be a game plan to conquer all the special Kislevite cities as Boris after a point. And then use a mod to revive Castalton and Catherine as legendary lords, because there's a number of mods. I'll talk about I'll list the mods I would recommend, but there's a mod to give you devotion from all enemies, not just warriors of chaos. You can gain them from Skaven, from vampires, from orcs. There's also a mod to give you Warband Recruitment, the system of recruitment that the warriors of chaos use. So those are the kind of things, but list of mods in the description of this video. I don't want to spend too much time. I'm more so focused on a vanilla guide rather than a modded one, but there, the devotion from everything one I would consider pretty mandatory, but yeah, you can check out the list of mods in the description of this video. Okay, so that's the economy. You need to focus on territories with resources, and also large regions, large provinces like the Ostermark can be great for you. And of course, the gold mines are incredibly important. For instance, over here in the northern world, Edge Mountains, you can settle mountains, by the way, as Kislev. You can settle the Imperial territory, Frozen territory. Frozen territory is actually more important than you might believe, because Frozen territory, if I toggle the Fog of War, Frozen territory is also the Dark Elven territory. Yeah, you can literally march across the map to invade Nagrand and take a lot of this juicy territory. And even this Frozen hellhole is actually better than the Kislev territory, because there might be quite a few resources available over here. Like, for instance, a province like the Spiteful Peaks, this would be amazing. It's got gold. For instance. That's a pretty big deal. Or Herganef, the Road of Skulls, has got 2 resources available over here. Like, a lot of good stuff that Dark Elves can get. I mean, sure, it would be a fairly long slog, but you can at least settle it. If you're playing Boris Ursus, you can also settle in Wastelands. This is mainly because Boris was meant to play a campaign in Darklands and Realms of Chaos, so you can settle in that territory properly. But yeah, Boris can settle in more types of territory than the other Kislev lords, and he gets a benefit in terms of selling in the Chaotic Wastelands. Now let's talk a bit about legendary lords. Katrin is the weakest. Like, I've got a campaign at turn 60. I'm the second strongest faction, or actually the strongest faction in this campaign on legendary, and I can tell you that Katrin is easily the worst Kislevite legendary lord. The reason behind this is you only get like some benefits with hero recruit rank and recruiting lords through the Ice Court. Okay, that can be beneficial, sure, but it doesn't matter as much as you might think it does. The hero recruiting rank is particularly meaningless because there's only so many Frost Maidens you can recruit, so it doesn't matter. I wouldn't say it does, honestly. The devotion from Frost Maiden actions, since you're going to have so few Frost Maidens, you're actually going to want to have them in armies at all times for the magical effect they give you in battle, so no, pretty meaningless. The only thing she does have, and can be pretty useful, especially when you're taking a lot of territory as I have, is the 6 control. Though there's a mod that removes the public order penalty, which I generally use, so that can be less of an issue. But by default, vanilla-wise, Katrin might have the best control of the territory she has. And control isn't just important to prevent rebellions, it's important for growth. The more control you have, the more growth you have. The more growth you have, the faster you can grow a region. That is significant. That is important regardless of how you cut it. And it is something worth pursuing. But outside of that, she's pretty crap. She's pretty useless. Like, her magic skill is not worth it all that much. Like, she has frost magic. Frost magic is not great. And you're not necessarily, and it's not even worth spending the points in that. Like, you're just better off focusing on her blue tree. Like, I've got in Quartermaster here, I'm going to get Renowned and Feared. She does get some benefits to Frost Magic, but it's not a great spell. The spells are more focused on buffing and debuffing, and it's not necessarily too great either. What about her special skill line? Because every legendary lord has a special skill line. Well, when you look at the only one that's worth it, like Ice Guard benefits, sure. Con Queen, okay. She's like, just like, yeah, Ward Save, Con Queen, and Indomitable Spirits, pretty good. But everything else, just very weak. And her lord benefits are not really worth it all that much. Though the corruption and upkeep, yeah, I mean, she's better as a recruitable lord than she is as playing her as a legendary lord. The one, Costalton, where is Costalton in this campaign, actually? Let me try and find the fanatic over here, if I can find him. If he hasn't been wiped out. Oh, he might have been wiped out. But what you need to know about Costalton, there he is. What you need to know about this guy is he's got benefits to buff the melee of Cossars. Now, this can be great for armored Cossars, but for regular range Cossars, it's not really that important for that. And his special skill line, yeah, also not too great. What about Boris Ursus? Boris Ursus is actually one of the a really good legendary lord in a lot of ways. Like, he's got more terrain types that he can settle if you play him than any of the others, right? Because he can sell more than just the Empire, Frozen, and Mountains as the other skins, but he can also settle Wastelands, and so he can sell Hell Pit. Like, Hell Pit is not worth keeping as Castalten or Catherine. You want to take it to wipe out front, but you don't want to keep it necessarily. But Boris can sell it, so you can turn it into a pretty formidable city that can generate a lot of income without too much hassle. But he can also sell Darklands, and also he can sell all of the Dwarven lands if you so desire. Like, you could genuinely just play as Boris, where you're going from, like, you go from the Frozen Landing into Karak Flag, and then just start moving to the south and make a campaign in the Dwarven lands and just ignore Kislev altogether. Well, except the special cities. Or do enough to keep Catra and Castalten alive, and then just ignore them altogether. While you move on the adventure with the boys in the south. He also starts with the strongest early game army, because he's going to start with 2 units of Tsarguard. Like, this is army I recruit for him, but he's going to start with 2 units of Tsarguard, and he's going to start with 2 units of Warbear Riders and 2 units of Armor Cossars. That's going to help you a lot. He also starts with the Patriarch. Katrin starts with squat. She starts with the weakest army of all of them. Castalten is in between, because his army is not as good as Boris, but he does have a Patriarch, he does have 2 units of Streltsy, which are pretty good range if you can get them to fire with all the problems that gunpowder units have. But if you do get them to fire, they will do quite well in battles, in a lot of ways. And yeah, Warbear Riders do absolutely do a great deal of damage. However, Boris, although he's great in a lot of ways, he's great in his special skill tree as well, with like campaign movement range, fearless fighter, weapon strength for warbears, Tsarguard benefits, brawler, which I actually should just like respec him when I get the money to get that and get Grand Builder. He gets a lot of benefits. And he gets benefits like if you play, especially if you play him because of all the settlement benefits. He gets a devotion benefit, which is actually pretty bloody significant as Kislev. Even if you play Kislev with a mod that literally gives you devotion for anything, you're still gonna have a lot of devotion shortages, because these structures, like when you look at these structures, they're 50 devotion by default, and it's always 50, and you can't really reduce it. Then you have to research for 200. Then you have the invocations like 360 to maintain an invocation right now. That's a lot. Boris can gain more devotion than anyone else. He can expand farther than anyone else because of the growth benefits he can get, not just through his special skill tree over here, but also through the fact that he can throw supporters Catherine's way and get a growth benefit for that. But you're like, yeah, he's the best legendary lord by far of all of them. And also he actually gets the benefit because you can play him, and you will have Catra and Castalten also helping out. They won't necessarily like you. You can't make both of them happy, let's put it like that. Or it takes some effort, but you can make both of them to be happy, so you can maintain military alliances, get access to all the research from the special cities, because I'll talk about research in just a second, but he can get military alliance with both of them. And yeah, he's got a lot going for himself. So yeah, my recommendation if you're trying to play Kislev, play Boris. He's actually the best by far. I've done campaign guides for all of them. I feel they are out of date because one of the things I didn't realize for a long time is how important it is getting resources in the south until much later on. Because when I was focusing on those guides, I was focusing on purely the early game. But to win a campaign in the mid-late game, you need to get a lot of resources and a lot of economy and get a lot of armies. But Boris still has a better situation than that. He can gain Prague pretty quickly, and I guess you can declare war on them. But just keep in mind, if either Castalten or Catherine gets wiped out, you can't throw supporters their way. But yeah, the legendary lord-wise, it's Boris by far. I would say Boris is actually better than both the Cafe and legendary lords, and that's saying a lot considering the situation that Cafe has, which is much better than Kislev. But he's far stronger. In fact, I would dare say Boris is probably the best of the older legendary lords that were added in Warhammer 3. And yes, I know that includes something like Scarbrand, but Scarbrand's campaign comes with a lot of downsides. But minus perhaps Scarbrand, he is by far stronger than all the others. Like just pure benefits, pure combat ability, pure economic benefits, faction benefits. Yeah, he's got a lot going. I think Boris represents the best Kislev has. Catherine's the worst, and Castalten is in between. Now, one thing I would mention that is incredibly silly about the campaign plan for Kislev is Kislev and Kislev is meant to be the bulwark of the north to fight chaos, and your game plan and campaign is gonna be conquer Sylvania, conquer the Empire, expand in territory outside of Kislev, and do the least amount of possible to hold back chaos. That is, like, going very hard against what Kislev should be. Like, yeah, I do have issues with that, in that respect. Anyway, that's the legendary lords. Let's talk about regular lords. You have several choices, free choices, though one of them is not necessarily going to be showing up by default, but there's free choices. There's the boyars, atamans. The atamans are basically boyars. They have the same skill tree, though they're basically special boyars. I'll get into explaining that. And then you've got the ice witches. The ice witches you gain by training them in the ice court. You need to unlock slots for this through research, but you can train ice witch lords. They can be either Tempest, like this one, or they can be Frost. I'd recommend focusing on Tempest because you're not going to have enough. Like, if you could have enough Frost Maidens with Tempest, yeah, I'd say go Frost. Could be useful to have both magic schools, give you more options. But if you have only one choice, generally you're going to only have one choice, I'd strongly recommend Tempest over Frost. That would be my perspective. And yeah, you gain them through training it, but you need research to unlock that. Okay. Let's talk about boyars. Here's what you need to know about boyar lords. With both legendary lords and regular lords, you always focus on campaign movement range first off, 5% campaign movement range, inspiring presence, then go get firing drills. I don't care what army you're using, I don't care what you're eventually going to use on. Like, you might get the one Button Respec mod if you want, you know, for Catherine in particular, because you might not care about firing drills at one point in your campaign. But essentially, you want, for the vast majority of your armies, for the vast majority of lords, you're going to want to get firing drills because they're going to improve your cost stars, armor cost stars, and streltsy. And that's basically, that's essentially most of your ranged units. And you're going to want a range-focused army. Like, this one is actually a fairly balanced army, but it still has a lot of streltsy and cost stars, so it's still benefiting quite a bit from that skill. So yeah, that's, so you got 2 points, 1 Marcher, 1 Inspired Paces, 2 points. 5 in total. And if you're leveling a legendary lord, you spend those points. You basically level up until level 7 and then you stop. And then you wait to be able to unlock their special skill tree. For regular lords, you get these points, these initial points, and then you should start increasing their combat ability. For instance, here you get heroic resilience, hard to hit, full plate armor, all that. Melee tree for boyars, magic tree for ice witch lords. And then eventually, like, as you get more and more levels, right, you can get another skill line and a red line, get rally, get skirmisher traditions, get stand your ground. You can get other things, right? Battle engineers, probably should get this one because he's got quite a few war sleds. Probably should just spend a point in that, but yeah, there's a bunch of things. Like, get whatever skill you're using, get skills here if you're using certain units. You do have a lot of skill points for lords, and you're not necessarily going to consume that. For legendary lords, you need to be you actually need to be a bit more careful and specialize their armies more because you do want their special skill line. Always consider that with legendary lords when it comes to leveling them up, because the special skills that they do have, be it in the special line here or the skills at the top, like Ram Builder or all that, those are going to consume quite a few skill points. So you're not necessarily going to be able to unlock everything with the legendary lord, though you can unlock quite a great deal with a regular lord. Okay, so those are boyars. What are atamans? Well, atamans are essentially the same thing as boyars. If I recruit one, and I can recruit one, let's say I recruit one over here, basically the exact same skill line. But here's the thing. The way atamans work is you can gain them through this right here. You can assign atamans if you have like every 2 provinces that you own, you can assign an ataman. So because I have over 12 provinces, I can assign 6 atamans. Now you can just leave them passively. These are basically the governors of a province. Over time, they will start, like, they start with some benefits, like a growth benefit. This guy's got a 25 growth benefit or a 5% income benefit. And they're going to have this as lords as well. Like, he's got the golden touch, right? So he gets 10 growth and 5% income. But then they can also gain special skills as you keep them as governors. Not if you get them in the field, but they can, like for instance, this guy has got the construction cost, 15% 20 growth, on top 20 growth, recruit rank for infantry units, recruit rank for cavalry, and yeah, recruitment and construction cost. The one I recruited right here as a lord has favors infantry, master builder, and reward 1. So he's got a special skill on top, right? So he gets a skill on top of that, right? On top of, or you don't need to get the heroic resilience, essentially. I think you don't. Yeah, you don't need to get you don't need to spend a skill point to have that. To have it, so you can get some real benefits, combat benefits or province benefits, mainly province benefits if you focus on atamans, but otherwise they're essentially the same as boyars. As for Ice Witch Lords, yeah, you have to recruit them. You can recruit as many Ice Witch Lords as you want, and you should probably, like, once you start unlocking them, you should probably constantly recruit them just to have a pool available of them. Some people have abused the save character to be able to just recruit a lot of high-level... I think some people have abused save character to recruit high-level lords in their campaigns, but either way, that... Or to get certain traits, because the thing about Ice Witch Lords, and this applies to Frost Maidens as well, the training will give them special traits. For instance, she has growth, missile strength for Ice Guard, and control for to all provinces. That's not even the best you can get. You can even get far, far better benefits with that. I have another one. She actually has some significant benefits in her own right. She gets a 30% upkeep benefit for war sled units, 10% missile strength, and leadership benefit when fighting chaos. And I think there is one that gives you a pure range strength for your entire army, not just Ice Guard. But yeah, you can, like for instance, she would lead an Ice Guard army. She can lead the war sled army. She has quite a few war sleds already because of that upkeep benefit, reducing it by a lot. And I do believe it does stack with a hero benefit that does the same thing. Because the Frost Maidens, which are limited in capacity, like you can recruit Frost Maidens in any province, but you need to increase the capacity. Increasing the capacity requires a fairly high level building. Basically, you can only increase the capacity for Frost Maidens either for some special structures or more commonly for the Covenant of Ice, which also gives you Ice Guards with glaives. If you're playing Catherine, you'll be able to recruit Ice Guards with glaives much earlier, so you're really only getting it for your capacity of Frost Maidens. Also comes with recruit rank of +4 and experience gain +100 for armies and province, so that can be useful over there. And this brings me to regular heroes. So they can get the same benefits. Like she has a 30% upkeep for war slide units, unbreakable, and perfect vigor. Though there's other benefit. There's some other benefits you can get as well with your ice witches, like growth, control, winds of magic. Quite a lot of benefits that you can pick up. I think I don't remember where I had the third one. It's not in Boris's army, is it? No, it's in this army. If I look at her, she gets a research benefit if I steal technology, unbreakable, and more winds of magic. Now, mages come into varieties: frost or tempest. They're gonna have the exact same skill tree. Otherwise, they have a magic tree over here. They have a blue line, which gives them benefits for getting items. That's probably the one you're gonna want to get first. Boosting income, not something I focus on because you want Frost Maidens to be at the front. You don't want to keep them in the back. Like, boosting income can be nice, but you're going to have a significant limited capacity until much later in your campaign if you're playing Kislev. And then Frost Maidens do have a special skill line or a choice. They can get Scholar for research benefit, cooldown benefits for spells. Magistrate is pretty good because when you're taking a province, like even for an expanding army, it's not for the income that you're getting in province because you want to keep them on in an expansionist army, but rather for that 10% construction cost when you're taking over a province and you want to build new stuff right there. Yeah, that can be pretty useful, I've come to realize. Though, yeah, cooldown to all spells could be useful, though Winds of Magic limitations in a battle are gonna make it... I mean, it depends on the kind of battle. Like, if you're fighting a battle very quickly and you're trying to cast spells very quickly, it's going to matter. But if it's a long battle and you're just gonna run out of Winds of Magic, yeah, it's a bit pointless anyway. When it comes down to it. And then finally you've got Patriarchs. Patriarchs can only be recruited from Orthodoxy Chapel, or the equivalent in the big Kislev cities, the equivalent being the Orthodox Church going into the Orthodoxy Cathedral. But mainly the chapels. I would not bother with the chain in a city because it's slightly more expensive than the regular churches in minor settlements, and they also cost more devotion, and the only benefit is that you're not going to get benefits to Patriarchs, more so you're just going to get the control benefit and a bit more devotion and supporters. You can earn some devotion passively, but it's not going to be a lot. You can also earn some supporters passively, but you're going to need to earn supporters by doing the invocations. Patriarchs are great for a couple of reasons. You can gain a lot of them if you have a decent amount of churches. Like right now, I've got 9. I could have gotten more, but I focused on the support array, so I needed to spend all the devotion on invocation, so limited Patriarchs. Besides, each army that I have has at least 1. Some have even 2. Patriarchs are great for several reasons. 3 big reasons. 1, they give a lot of replenishment. This army right here has 17 replenishment. I think it might actually be higher if I'm not mistaken, because I have a Patriarch that's giving quite a bit over here, and then I have 2 Patriarchs. I'm pretty certain it stacks. I could be wrong on that, but either way, Patriarchs give a substantial amount of replenishment. One of the key benefits that Kislev does have in their campaign is that they have very high replenishment through Patriarchs. Problem Catherine has is she doesn't start with the Patriarch, and she doesn't have enough devotion to get them easily, but yeah. Once she gets them, things get a lot better. And each chapel is going to give you 1 capacity to Patriarch. So it is worth investing in getting them, though I would generally only invest until tier 2. I don't remember why I built this to tier 3. But that's one of the main reasons, one of the biggest reasons actually. The second reason is actually the special skill line here, because you get Urson's Roar, which gives you a charge and leadership bonus for our allies in range, though it is a relatively short range for all their abilities, and then they get the choice of what ability they want to have. Costin is an Uber Patriarch, so he gets all 3, though you may not want to have the skill points for all 3, but different discussion. But essentially the way I'd view it is Tor's Balham is generally the one you want for most armies, though the Vigor per second of Dash could be pretty useful as well. Celiac's Lullaby I would not use in an army unless it's an army like this, potentially, or an army of Elemental Bears. The reason I'd only use it in an army like this is fewer entities are actually affected by healing a lot better than a lot of entities or a lot of models in a unit. So Celiac is not necessarily worth it. Then they have a melee skill line. The way you level them up, like mages are fairly easy to level. You just invest in their magic tree and other skills when you get the opportunity. But with Patriarchs, I'd spend all the points on replenish troops whenever possible. Then I'd get Urson's Roar into Tor's Battle Hymn or Dash, or both. Well, both. I mean, if you have 2 Patriarchs in an army, like, you know, one gets Dash, one gets Tor. Or maybe both can get Tor, for instance, because, you know, limited range and all that kind of stuff. Then I'd spend points in their melee skill. One of the things you always want with both Lords and in Heroes is if you're getting their melee skill line, get melee defense whenever possible. Like with Patriarchs, 3 points in Impassioned, 1 point in Wild Eye. That will be enough to get Blessing Discs, and Blessing Discs will unlock Inviolable and Tenacity. And like the way I'd level a Patriarch, I think Catherine has a high level one, because that's actually a relatively recent army, but she has a higher level one. Like, this is how I leveled him. I got 3 points in Impassion, 1 point in Wild Eye, that unlocked Blessing Discs, and then I got 3 points in Viable, 1 point in Tenacity, and then I got Enduring Devotion, which gives a melee defense to all units. At a high enough level, at 20, you will get a choice over here in this skill tree. You can get Healer, which will give you more replenishment, benefit to Celiac, or ability to hinder replenishment. Also an attrition benefit. That's actually significant because the Cast Wasteland does cause attrition, and if you're fighting there, you will want attrition reduction, so you don't have to move in a camp stance like this. Because if I move regularly, for instance, the Scar Guard is 73, that's going to be at 72, and that's with skills to reduce. That's with the Reassuring Presence to reduce attrition by quite a bit on Catherine. But you get the choice. I would choose the one that buffs the skill that you're using. So where Tor battles him, you would get Thunderous Orator. Mounts are unlocked automatically. Resistance Protection, get that whenever you can. Just 10% missile resistance, and that's essentially it. At the very high level, you can get Mentor, like a level 30 plus. Get Mentor, increase that to rank 2 and then like rank 3 when it's available to help level up your other heroes around your faction. But you're going to have a lot more Patriarchs than Frost Maidens because it's far easier to increase their capacity than it is to increase the Frost Maiden capacity in a campaign until much later on, and you need a vast amount of territory to do so. Because basically you're only going to get, you're only going to be able to get Frost Maiden capacity higher with a major settlement. That's what you're going to need, a provincial capital, in order to get this particular building to give you 1 hero capacity. So it would take major provinces outside of Kislev to be able to do it. Though even the provinces in Kislev still allow you to get Covenant of Ice, like the Kislev City, you can get it. But yeah, I'm not sure I would want to get this in, I might, but you know, you have other things in Kislev cities. Though you could obviously get rid of the Masons Guild by that point, because you're not going to be constructing new buildings. Just get rid of that and replace it, I guess, at that particular point with hero capacity for Frost Maidens. But yeah, that's essentially what you need to know. Like Patriarchs, like Frost Maidens, Tempest, almost always go Tempest besides Frost. Like you can use Frost as a complement, but you almost always want to have a Tempest mage. Like you can either be the Lord or the maid or the hero, or you can make the Lord Frost and make the Maiden Tempest. I think I would recruit almost every hero Lord as Tempest until much later on in the campaign, and then start splitting them, get some Frost Maidens with Frost, put the ones with Tempest. Like in this army I could take her out, put one with Frost to just complement that magic skill much later on in this particular campaign. And with Patriarchs, get a lot of them. They're good melee, they're pretty decent melee fighters. They're not the best, but they're pretty decent. They have a good amount of armor, a good amount of damage, and they can survive quite a few hits because, well, partly because of their skill line, partly because of their innate survivability. Though be careful, they can be a bit more squishy than you might imagine. I've learned that the hard way in quite a few campaigns I've played as Kislev. So that's Heroes and Lords, economy, campaign plan. Also talked a bit about mods. What about units? What units should you recruit? Well, one mod that will help you is obviously going to be Warband Recruitment, because Warband Recruitment will allow you to basically go in this tree, right? Let's say you've got Cossars, you can turn them into Armor Cossars, eventually in Starguard, you can turn them into Streltsy, eventually Heavy War Sleds and Light War Sleds. But what units should you recruit? And how? For which heroes? Which lords? Which legendary lords? Well, for Costin, it doesn't matter necessarily, though he does benefit Cossars, but yeah, you shouldn't rely on Cossars. Like, it's not, the benefits Costin gives with Cossars are not going to be worth it. For Boris Ursus, you're pretty much always going to want to have Warbear Riders in his army. Not necessarily a full stack, but at least some will be very beneficial because he gives them a significant upkeep benefit, as well as some other benefits like, you know, Brotherhood of Bears, 14 weapon strength is quite a lot. For Catherine, you can make her army an entire Ice Guard army. But even with the mod, it can be tricky recruiting that many Ice Guard. Like, I would basically have to replace her as the leader of this particular army, recruit her again in Kislev and start pumping out Ice Guard. I have the capacity to recruit Ice Guards here, but yeah. General purpose armies, it depends on the traits you actually have active in those armies, especially for the Ice Witch Lords. And you might want to have every army actually led by an Ice Witch Lord, because the Bayars, yeah, you mean, they're decent melee fighters, but Patriarchs are also decent melee fighters, and they're more easily sacrificed than your regular Lords. You might want to focus, and also because you're going to have limited magic because of limited Frost Maidens, you might benefit quite a bit from putting Ice Witch Lords as the leaders of most of your armies. Like, I have 5 armies in this campaign, 1 by Boris, 1 by Catherine, but 2 of them are led by Ice Witch Mages, and the only one that's led by a Boyar is a Boyar that I've had for much of this campaign, actually, because I recruited him turn 1. Either way, when it comes to the armies you're going to recruit, it's going to depend on the traits. Like, for instance, for her, I would want some Ice Guard eventually. For her, because she's got that benefit for sleds, I would want quite a few war sleds. But generally speaking, here's what you need to know about unit recruitment. Your economy is going to be very limited early on, so you might rely early on, like let's say the first 10 to 20 turns, you're going to rely on a heavy number of Kossars. They're not the best range units. Goblin archers, I would argue, are on par with them. They're a bit weaker, but they're also cheaper, and they can do a lot of damage and have a good amount of range as well. The Goblin archers, not the Kossars. The problem with Kossars is that they're incredibly weak in a lot of ways. They've got low armor, so they'll take a lot more damage. Their melee stats are pathetic. So even though they're supposed to be a hybrid unit, don't use them as a melee unit. They're pretty pathetic. They can be decent range units, but I would argue that they're no better than archers, tier 1 archers. And you recruit them from every type of settlement in Kislev. And that might form the backbone of your early game army, or a lot of your armies. If you want to maintain a very large number of armies, regular Kossars are going to be the bread and butter of those armies. Of course, the downside is they're going to do pretty poorly in a lot of situations like bad terrain, sieges, etc. They're not going to do so well. One critical issue Kislev is going to have in their campaigns is that you only have 1 artillery piece, Lethal Groms, and they're tier 4. And it can be an absolute nightmare to get settlements to tier 4. Because the Kislev cities, you can get decent growth in them, sure, but it comes from 2 structures, and you might want to consume the building slots in other ways, and you don't necessarily have a lot of settlements. Like, if you're playing Kislev, you almost always want to build economic buildings, not growth buildings in your settlements. Because the growth buildings, yeah, it's a good amount of growth, but your economy is pretty poor and you need to invest in making it better. So growth can be a bit slow. It's nowhere near as bad as the dwarves. You can get pretty decent growth as Kislev, don't get me wrong, but it's coming at the sacrifice of something else, be it control or economy or something like that. But essentially, Kislev is going to have a lot of issues early on in sieges because they have no artillery to break down the walls, they have no artillery to break down the wall towers, makes a whole lot of issues. Many times, this isn't too big of a problem because you can abuse ranged units to kill units behind the walls, and that's going to be your game plan. You're going to march with a bunch of Kossars to the walls, and you're not going to charge up the walls. You're going to kill everything behind them with a bunch of regular Kossars. This is why armored Kossars are not worth using, or Streltsy in a lot of ways early on in your campaign. Like, yeah, you can use Streltsy for the open field battle benefit, absolutely, but in sieges, you're gonna need other options. And it's especially an issue early on. Later on, as you start dominating the map, it's less important, and once you get level Groms, you'll have a perfect tool to break down walls, but still a problem. So this pushes you from economic benefits and siege benefits, it pushes you towards going for regular Kossars. What about armored other units? Well, the barracks chain at tier 1 only gives you Kossars with spears. They can be pretty decent at dealing with some cavalry, but that's essentially it. They're still pretty crap in melee. But if, they're getting attacked by bats or they're getting attacked by weak cavalry, they can hold their own decently. Armored Kossars are pretty decent melee units, but that's just it. They're decent and they're tier 2 and they're a bit more expensive than regular Kossars, like 14 more upkeep, quite a bit more in terms of recruitment. If I look at recruitment options right now, over here, actually, not over here. Let me see if with the Lord in Prague. The reason is Prague has a special structure that gives me armor Kossars. Like, yeah, regular Kossars 270 right now. I have a lot of benefits to recruitment cost right now. But armor Kossars, great weapons are quite a bit more expensive. Even getting pretty close to double the cost of regular Costars. And you need money. You need money for buildings, you need money to maintain your armies, so you're not going to have a lot of money to spend willy-nilly. So Costars, bread and butter. Things like Streltsy armor Costars from the barracks chain. Streltsy can be good in open field battle, but you almost always need elevation or clear lines of sight to use them, which is a problem in sieges. Like, I would use Streltsy in my armies, sure, but I would not go more than 4 units of Streltsy in any army. Complement them with Costars or Ice Guards if you can afford them. But outside of that, don't go with more Streltsy than that. Get melee units, armored Costars, or other units that you might have available. Cavalry-wise, well, I would not bother with the cavalry chain. The cavalry chain is a waste of money because wing lancers, yeah, they're pretty speedy cavalry. They can do a lot of damage. They can have a huge charge bonus, but generally speaking, they're not worth it. Far better, instead, to get some other buildings. Like, even with the tier 3 settlement, it might be worth it to get the animal, then partly for the furs resource production, partly for the bloody snow leopards. Snow leopards are glass cannons, but so are wing lancers, so are the wing lancers over here. And certainly don't bother with horse archers. Like, horse archers versus Costars, use the Costars. Dervishes versus anything else, yeah, use anything else, because dervishes are crap, plain and simple. They don't have a huge charge bonus. The only thing they have as a benefit is they're very fast, but they're really bad even as a charge cavalry. Snow leopards will generally do a lot better because they're gonna have they're gonna do significantly more damage, though they're pretty weak in terms of their armor as well. They're very much a glass cannon. Though at tier 4 you can get war bears, or you can get the royal barracks into the chapter house and get the Griffin Legion, which is far more heavily armored, well, quite a bit more heavily armored than the wing lancers. If you're using a mod, you might get wing lancers because the mod will allow you with certain experience to turn them into Griffin Legion and then warbear riders, but by default I would not bother at all with the by default I would never bother with the cavalry chain. And even with mods, I would still certainly not focus it. If you want cavalry, regular cavalry, your best bet is actually Prague to get the bleakness, to get the Griffin Legion. If you just want the regular horses. If you want the bears, yeah, go for the animal den into all the way into the grander buildings, the stables, more or less. You might want, though, if we're talking about cavalry and other units, you might want to focus on the toolmaker into the smithery. Because here's the thing, right? War sleds are pretty freaking fast themselves. They're not as fast as wing lancers or snow leopards, but they're pretty decently fast. They're good flankers. Crucially, although they don't have a great charge bonus, they'll absolutely demolish an enemy in melee. They'll actually do better in melee than than most, if not all, of your proper melee units. Like, you consider this. This is a heavy war sled. This is a Tsar Guard. I'm gonna tell you one thing. The war sleds would win in melee hands down. They only have slightly less melee attack, but they have a lot more armor. Right? They have a lot more armor. They have more melee attack, they have more armor, a bit less leadership, less melee defense, but they also do a lot more damage. And they're also a hybrid unit like that. This hybrid mounted unit is one of your best, one of the best melee front lines. Also, or the war bears, really. Like, if you want the strong melee front line, the war bears are your best bet. But here's the benefit of the war sleds. By default, they can be pretty expensive to recruit, right? Because if I wanted to recruit a war sled, that's a lot, and to maintain them 400, yeah, that's a great deal of, that's a huge cost, right? Compared to most other things you have, even like ice guards. But you can get that trait, which will reduce them and make them more manageable. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it stacks between lore. So if I moved a hero here that had the Ice Chariot here, I could get a significant upkeep benefit, I think. But even if that doesn't stack, I'm not sure if it does, I'll be honest with you guys. But even if it doesn't stack, you can still get 30% upkeep benefit through the Ice Court, through training. And I believe you can save characters to train them if you so desire. Though I'm not sure if that would work and how well that works. I've never personally tried it, to be honest. I don't enjoy exploiting that. Though I think people have found a way to do so. But war sleds can be really good units. That said, they are expensive to recruit, and they do take tier 3 or tier 4. Actually, Costin has a really good way of recruiting them through the Frost Home for that special structure, because he's going to start with Terengrad tier 2. Catherine starts tier 1. He can get quite a few of these, and they're really good melee units. Even the light war sleds are actually going to be pretty good melee units and capable of holding their own. The heavy war sleds just are some of the best units in Kislev's roster. Not just because of their combat power, but because of their affordability. So, if you have the trait to reduce their upkeep. By default, they're expensive, but if you can reduce it, that's great. Going back to unit recruitment, what other options would you have if you're playing as Kislev? Well, the final option, like obviously you want to get artillery. I would recommend once you get the little Grom, and I would prioritize getting the structure as quickly as possible for the war sleds, if nothing else. But with little Groms, I would say each army having 1 or 2 of them is pretty good for sieges. More than that, it's not important. Catherine's army has 3 over here, though I do intend to give 1 of them, and that was the intent behind recruiting 3, is to give 1 of them to this army right here as we continue our march against Archaon. By artillery, 1 or 2. They're not great for field battles, but they're really good at taking down walls. So 1 or 2, even 1 will do a really good job against walls and wall towers and make your life a lot easier. And then, of course, the Ice Guard, like War Bears, if you can afford them, especially with war resources. But with other armies, you might afford them. Just 1 or 2 units in every army can be a huge game changer. Though most of the time, you probably would be better off getting heavy war sleds, because they're going to be cheaper if you have the trait. And yeah, they might even be better than War Bears. Not as much damage, but still, pretty damn great, isn't it? Snow Leopard, some people have made Snow Leopard Doomstacks work because there's research to make them better, but I generally wouldn't focus on them. What about Ice Guard? Well, here's what I'm going to say about Ice Guards. Ice Guards are good. They're good ranged units. They will handily beat, well, with research you can make regular Constars pretty decent, but Ice Guards, they do have the benefit that they do have frostbite attacks, and they do have magical attacks. If you're fighting a lot of demons, that's pretty useful, and they have some decent stats overall. However, I don't necessarily think they're worth the investment most of the time. They're expensive to recruit. You need to have a reasonably high level settlement to recruit them, and they're not necessarily going to offer such a massive tangible benefit that they're going to be worth the massive expense you're going to spend on them. Like, I would certainly say Tsar Guard. Like, when it comes to melee units, I would certainly argue that getting armored Kossars into a Tsar Guard is worth it. But I will not argue that getting Ice Guard over Streltsy or Kossars can be worth it. Although, here's the thing. Ice Guard are going to have a lot more survivability, are going to be much better in sieges than Streltsy, and they're going to, like, they're just flat out better, but they're also way more expensive, and they take longer to recruit. So, for instance, an Ice Guard here, an Ice Guard with glaives is 309 upkeep versus 251. Well, they're only a bit more expensive than Streltsy, but they're a lot more expensive. They can be a lot more expensive to recruit. They can be worth it. I would say the only one that's really worth to have a lot of Ice Guards is Catherine herself, because she gets that 50% upkeep reduction for them. That can be worth it. It can be a good army. When I played Warhammer 3, when it came out originally, I won my first campaign with Catherine. Like, Kislev used to be a lot better in the Realms of Chaos than Immortal Empires. The geographic decisions that Creative Assembly made with Kislev really screwed them over in Warhammer, in Immortal Empires. But I basically won it with her entire army being made of Ice Guard, because, yeah, I could have this army for, I don't know, half the cost if I just made it, maybe a bit more, but I could certainly reduce the upkeep cost of this army by quite a lot if I just literally had ice guards in it for it. For Boris, yes, he does get an upkeep benefit, but remember, Warband Riders are going to be quite expensive, though I think his trait might be a bit bugged right here if I'm... No, it isn't bugged, it's working as intended. Warband Riders are just expensive. Sleds are, like, in conclusion, recruitment-wise, the free units you should focus on are Cossars, maybe Cossars with Spears if you can afford getting a barracks building, though not too many of them. Regular Cossars are going to be better against regular infantry units, or Cossars with Spears against cavalry and giant units. But focus on Cossars as your bread and butter. Tsarguard for a good melee front line. Streltsy for some range firepower. Loggrams, but, you know, for the economy scale, really. Cossars, Loggrams to break down walls, and eventually sleds. Those are probably your three best choices. Kislev's roster is fairly limited. There's not necessarily a lot to talk about. Moving on to research. Well, one of the things to mention about research is this. You can increase the research rate by quite a lot by doing this. You go into the research tree, and let's say you're researching currency exchanges. You cancel that research, and you go into a battle. Just cancel it before you go into a battle, if you can. And then you have a chance to earn an ancillary. It's not 100%, it is a chance. That ancillary is called student, and each student that can only be given to heroes will give you 10% research rate. I believe the Empire and certainly dwarves can gain students. In fact, the dwarves have a much bigger benefit with this because they can also get an ancillary that their lords can use called the Archivist, and only their lords. Students can only be equipped. Equipped by heroes, and it says how you gain it. Ranked up while not researching a technology. So while you're ranking up a hero, while not researching a technology, you can get a student. I think it applies though to lords as well if they rank up while not researching a technology. So just be aware of that. That's how you gain them. They can really help your research rate by quite a lot, though you will need a lot of heroes to benefit that. Now, in terms of the research tree, the first things I'd prioritize is this. Get ice sculpting, or rather get cold storage, then ice sculpting in your campaigns. Catherine starts with ice sculpting, so you won't need to research that, and then get Troll Country Pathfinder. Campaign movement range is very significant for anyone that has it. So get that. Once those three are done, you can focus on other things. I would focus immediately after on Pirate's Weapons, because that will give you some much needed armor piercing for all your units, especially regular Cossars, reload time reduction, and range. After that, Convalescence for more casualty replenishment, like you're getting 2% with 3% on top of the Patriarchs. That's quite a lot. And then you could focus on getting an Ice Court Indoctrination. Like, there, you can get four recruitment slots here, and I would prioritize getting at least one of each, because it's one hero capacity for each research, for the 2 research each for Frost Maidens, so you're going to be able to get 3 in total until tier 5, unless you have a special building. But yeah, you can get free capacity for just the research over here. Ice Court Indoctrination or Ice Court Control gives you control faction Y +1 and recruit rank for all Kislev units, as well as Ice Witch Lords. Beyond that, so those would be things like that I would prioritize. Get Troll Country Pathfinder, get Convalescence, get Pirate's Weapons above Convalescence, and then, you know, get your hero capacity up. After that, things like improve lookout, Streltsy if you're using Streltsy Arsenal for ammunition and armor piercing damage, and then get Prog. The reason I say get Prog is Siege Mentality is incredibly good. You're going to use a lot of Cossars in your campaign. 15% ammunition is worth a lot in that campaign. Beyond those kind of things, I would say you have a lot of choices, not necessarily great. Like if you're using a lot of war sleds, armor for war sleds can be great, and you know, you can unlock all the way here for breach loaders and dwarven anvils. Well, not dwarven anvils, but breach loaders can be great by quite for a lot of armor piercing. Though that's more of a late game benefit. than anything else. Global recruitment capacity, missile resistance. I'd really focus on siege mentality. So you need to have, like outside this tree here, you need to have the special cities to unlock that. Either you or a military ally, I think it is, or is it defensive ally? One of those two. But I would certainly focus on siege mentality, because that is worth it. And then, and I would recommend getting improved lookouts, Streltsy Arsenal. These two are not worth it. Improving the gods is not worth it because it's a lot of devotion until much later on in your campaign. And even then, I'd probably get Urson first and then maybe Dash. The other gods are not worth it at all. Prague veterans, the psychology can be good. You can get Iron River Stone. You need Ice Cade Collars. 15% missile, weapon strength for Snow Leopards, pretty good. But Iron River Stone will significantly reduce the cost of construction, especially for resource building, producing buildings. Those can be pretty expensive. And, you just continuously get more, like, improved relations to the Empire can help you diplomatic relations. But yeah, I would say Prague is worth it for siege mentality. The other ones, not necessarily so much. Because when you look at it, it's not too great. Though the Orthodoxy Blessed can be great, because recruit rank for Kislev units, global recruitment direction, recruitment cost. Yeah, that can be great. I would not focus necessarily on Earngrad, because the benefits here are not really so substantial. Though 15 growth can be worth it, though I will argue that focusing more on Kislev can be worth it, because 10% missile resistance, income from oil buildings, that's worth quite a bit. From my perspective. The research tree has a bunch of good choices, has a bunch of meaningless choices. I do like, in some ways, the way it's structured, because you don't have to recruit a bunch of useless stuff that you're not going to use most of the time. Like, you can go directly for what you want, or you need to spend some points in trees to unlock a higher level. But most of the time, you're actually getting stuff that's going to be useful, like, ammunition for Ice Guard, with Glacial Prism. I mean, I got that to unlock it because I'm going to use it eventually, but not right now. Not right now, or I could, just replace Katrin in this army and move her to another army. And that's Kislev in a nutshell, boys and girls. Hope you found this all very useful. Check the mods in the description, it will make your campaigns far more enjoyable. Kislev does need the major buffs, reworks, like the economy needs buffs, the devotion situation needs buffs, and I honestly think their campaign needs a rework. They should be a defensive-oriented campaign, more like the Wood Elves than they are right now, where they're spanning the globe, conquering the entire globe, as a mandatory effort to win their campaign, to get the supporters they need to win the campaign. So yeah, that's all I had to say. If you do enjoy my videos, please hit that like button. And if you're interested in getting some help with your campaigns, please send it via the email in the link in the description below. Stay tuned.